The free-to-play hero shooter called FragPunk was released recently on March 7 by Bad Guitar Studio. I therefore thought it was time to talk about what's good and bad in this newly released FPS title. This is a game where shard cards has an impact on the actual gameplay, since they allow the players to break or at least bend the rules of combat. It also gives some variation between rounds, since the next round will most likely be different, due to the cards chosen by your team but also the enemy team. I also played the beta before the actual release, had some fun playing it, but I have to admit that I'm now a bit ambivalent when it comes to how I feel overall about FragPunk. I therefore thought I'll try to break it down a bit without going too much into detail in order to give you my early thoughts and impressions of FragPunk. So let's start with the positive stuff first. Now the visuals, I like colorful games, and a game can hardly be more colorful than this. I also think that many of the cyberpunkish characters in the game that are called Lancers looks pretty cool, so I'm also okay with the art style overall. The map design in the game is also overall okay. I haven't encountered a map yet, at least that I believe is like bad per se, although that also depends a bit what kind of game mode you choose to play in FragPunk. One of the big positive things is the overall performance in the game. Now the game plays well, something that I experienced already during the actual playtest. This is something that we unfortunately don't always see or experience nowadays when talking about a newly released game. So a thumb up for the performance. I also have to mention the fact that the game is free to play, which definitely will attract quite some players, and the game can also run on pretty low spec PCs, which also makes it possible for more people to play the game, which is a good thing. So overall, on the positive side of things, this is a game that I can see myself having fun playing once in a while, but yes, there's a but, since we're now getting into the part of the video where I'll talk about things that I believe are a bit more on the kind of bad side of things in FragPunk, or maybe at least things that might be looked into and maybe improved. First off, there's no console version out yet, PC only, and that's also one of the reasons I believe why the game initially got mixed reviews on Steam, although it is now, when I'm making this video, mostly positive reviews. But honestly, if a game such as FragPunk will survive, you will need the console player base as well, so I hope this happens soon. According to the developers, they would like to take more time to optimize the game further, so we can realistically expect the title to release on Xbox and PlayStation in the spring or even summer of 2025. I hope that's not too late, since we've already read and seen what happened or is happening around Delta Force, another free-to-play shooter. We've talked about visuals, saying that it is a good-looking game, at least if you like the art style and design of the game. But what about the audio, the sounds? Well, to be honest, audio isn't that great. Footsteps are extremely loud compared to many other modern shooters today out there, and since there aren't no distinct difference between teammates or enemy footsteps, it can almost sound like there's a stampede of camels around the next corner sometimes. But at the same time, I'm glad that we can actually hear footsteps, since we've played, or at least I've played, quite some shooters where it's almost impossible to hear enemy footsteps, which doesn't make sense, especially if you're playing a somewhat tactical shooter, since you need those audible cues as well to determine where the player is at. If players aren't crouch walking, of course. So with that said, maybe they should turn down the volume a bit when it comes to the sound of the footsteps overall. Due to the hero shooter nature of FragPunk, there will be quite a lot of voice lines that might become a bit tedious to listen to, especially if you decide to put down a lot of time into the game. I haven't really seen if there's an option to turn off these voice lines in the settings. Feel free if you know that's a thing in the game. The actual gunplay is decent, however, for being a tactical 5v5 plant the bomb kind of shooter, the guns feel surprisingly easy to use, if that makes sense, meaning more or less no recoil to take into consideration. If you come from a background playing Call of Duty, for example, that might feel familiar and also preferable, but again, since the main game mode is a more competitive tactical plant the bomb game mode, I was expecting a bit more diversity between the weapons and at least some kind of recoil pattern to get used to. If I would be harsh, it does feel a bit as I'm shooting in a mobile shooter, especially since I later figure out also that you are sometimes much better off just not aiming down sight and shoot from the hip, especially if you're playing team deathmatch. Aim high, go for the upper body or an head instead, and you can more or less double your KD, maybe even. A small tip. Well, headshots do count in FragPunk, and maybe a bit too much in relation to the damage you do when you're hitting the torso, upper torso, or other limbs on the enemy players. Not sure if this is on like the good or bad section per se in the video, but I wanted to mention it at least. I'm a bit disappointed that they decided to slow down the movement from what it was in the beta. This slower movement would make sense if FragPunk was even more tactical as described, also when it comes to the gunplay and the overall design. I can understand what they're trying to do here, kind of tone down the run and gun approach some in order to encourage a more tactical approach. But again, I think that the faster movement in the beta was a better fit for FragPunk, especially when there's respawn game modes available as well in the game, such as TDM as an example, even if it's not like the main mode per se in FragPunk. The shard cards is a fun, although not unique thing. We've seen this before in other games, but it does add a bit of fun and quirkiness even into the game. When you, for example, choose the big head card for the opponents, so they show up with drastically bigger heads. However, as I heard Shroud saying the other day in a video, after some time when players do get used to the cards and what they do in combination with each other, you can start to understand and almost predict whether the opponents will play aggressive and maybe rush the next round, or if they choose another kind of strategy. So maybe, just maybe, they should later down the line also have a classic FragPunk game mode option, if you will, where they simply remove the cards completely from the equation in the game. I know that devs don't want to kill their darlings, but sometimes that could be a good thing to do. Maybe at least as a time-limited game mode. There's a lot of things to grind for if you're into that in FragPunk. However, it seems to me that doing that or leveling up seems a bit slow, especially considering that you unlock ranked gameplay, which by the way features an 11-round format at level 30. That will indeed take quite some time to reach for some, and I'm afraid that it might also push away some players that have been looking forward to play ranked much earlier at an already lower level. Again, feel free to fill in when it comes to your thoughts about this as well. Another thing that might land in the bad section for some players is all the different monetization options in FragPunk. FragPunk's monetization is quite wild, to be honest, and there's so many different currencies, both premium and free to play, that it's honestly hard and also a bit annoying to keep track of. It will be put into your face also when you boot up the game and also when it comes to the UI. So for me, it leaves a bit of a sour taste in my mouth, but at the same time, I am a person or a player that don't care too much since I very seldom buy things in games anyway. But it's there and it should be said. With the somewhat bad or maybe improved section out of the way now, let's be a bit general again in the later part of the video. Is there an anti-cheat system in place, you might wonder? Yes, FragPunk uses Vandal anti-cheat, I think it's called, when you load it, but it seems that it's actually a variant of NEAC, which works in other games with Proton like Marvel Rivals and Naraka Bladepoint. How well it will work in FragPunk is yet to be seen, since a free-to-play shooter always attracts like cheaters, unfortunately. Are there skill-based matchmaking in FragPunk? Well, I'm not 100% sure about this, at least not yet, but there's most likely some kind of matchmaking algorithm in play. I hope though that they'll keep SBMM or similar out of the casual game modes and playlists. I also wish that there was an option so you could be able to start playing against real people, meaning PvP, instantly when you start playing FragPunk, or at least very soon. It felt like there was bots or AI a bit too long for my taste when you start to play the game. So to wrap things up a bit, FragPunk can definitely be fun to play, although I would personally choose Counter-Strike 2, for example, as a free-to-play option if I would like to play more competitive again. At the same time, FragPunk has a bit more laid-back and casual design and look overall, also due to its pretty easy to grasp gunplay and overall features, so maybe that will be something that could appeal to enough players to keep a player base in the long run. At the same time, I hope they do consider even so to add more respawn game modes later down the line also, since I believe that's where some players, maybe myself included, will have most fun over time in a game such as FragPunk. It feels as if they're trying to please a lot of different kind of players or FPS gamers in order to grow a community around their game by both having game modes that appeals to casual players but also a bit more competitive. Sometimes it's better to niche and be really good at one thing in a game, like a certain game mode or style, instead of being just decent at some casual respawn game modes and a one life game mode such as Shard Clash, which is the one life plant the bomb mode in FragPunk. But who knows, maybe that will work out well for FragPunk when it comes to the longevity of the game. If you come this far, thanks for watching the video, I really appreciate it. And if you enjoyed, of course, please leave a like, it helps me out here on YouTube. And maybe you want to subscribe, it's free also here on YouTube. And I'll talk to you soon in an upcoming video. With that said, have a great day and keep on gaming. Later.